Welcome to the Titan Tar channel. Today we have a topic to discuss about the new Russian offensives and the Ukrainian Armed Forces in an atrophied state. Don't miss the chance to join us and share your opinions with us. Become a member of our channel and evolve your rank. Russian armored vehicles such as tanks, troop carriers, and infantry fighting vehicles, which previously had streamlined and inconspicuous silhouettes, have now taken on a new form. They have turned into real monsters, covered on all sides with lattice armor and anti-tank nets, as reported by a European magazine. The reason for this transformation is clear. The modern battlefield is full of FPV drones and strike munitions capable of damaging or destroying these vehicles. The author of the article points out that although the frontal and side protection of these armored vehicles may offer some resistance to impacts, the greatest danger lies in attacks from the upper hemisphere and the rear. In response to this threat, Russian experts are developing technical solutions to improve the defense of their vehicles against such air attacks. To protect the top of the vehicles, the turrets of Russian tanks and other armored vehicles are being equipped with reinforced visors, anti-drone protection nets, active defense systems, special camouflage, and electronic countermeasures to block control of FPV drones. The rear, in turn, is being reinforced with layers of rubber, improving protection against attacks. This radical change in the design of Russian armored vehicles reflects the direct impact of the war in Ukraine, as noted by the Western press. Meanwhile, the Russian army continues to advance on several fronts towards Artemovsk. After a period of stabilization on the front lines, the Russian armed forces have managed to expand their control in strategic areas such as Chasov Yar and Kleshchivka. This success is partly due to the weakening of Ukrainian defenses, which have shifted forces to the Kursk region, allowing the Russians to gain ground. In the Bogdanovka area, Russian troops have advanced several kilometers and secured a foothold, facilitating future offensive operations. In addition, Russian forces control about 70% of the Kalinowka territory, and the complete capture of this area will open a strategic route to Chasov Yar from the north. In Kleshchivka, the Russians have also secured an advantageous position at a strategic height, which is crucial for controlling the area. In parallel, a British newspaper published an article highlighting that the US and NATO have the ability to destroy nuclear launch sites in Russia and China using conventional weapons. Researchers at the University of London described this capability as a quiet revolution that reflects the growing military power of the US vis-a-vis Moscow and Beijing, especially in the field of missiles. Experts estimate that Russia has 150 nuclear launchers and China about 70, all located within 2,500 kilometers of its borders. These locations could be hit by cruise missiles launched by the U.S. within about 2 hours as part of a preemptive strategy. Researchers say the U.S. and its allies could even threaten the mobile and covert nuclear forces of Russia and China using an underestimated conventional arsenal of air-to-surface missiles that can be launched from standard transport aircraft such as the C-17 and C-130. The report concludes that U.S. and NATO conventional firepower, often underestimated, is a key element in the global balance of power. The study's authors question whether Russia or China fears U.S. military capabilities enough to start a new arms race. They cite the U.S.'s 2024 threat assessment, which highlights China's fear of a preemptive strike as the main reason for Beijing's expansion of its nuclear arsenal. This concern, they argue, reflects growing global tensions. Meanwhile, after a brief pause for regrouping, the Russian military resumed offensive operations in the Pokrovsky direction in Donetsk. However, contrary to the predictions of many analysts, Russian troops did not launch a direct attack on large Ukrainian logistics bases in the Donbass. Instead, they focused on taking strategic positions on the heights around the settlements, a strategy aimed at avoiding large losses in direct clashes. This decision by the Russian command makes sense, since Ukrainian forces, realizing the gravity of the situation in Pokrovsk, have deployed reserve units to reinforce the area. The Russian offensive, which had previously been advancing rapidly, capturing settlements on a daily basis, faces a more complex challenge in Pokrovsk. The city is crucial for Ukrainian logistics and will be vigorously defended by the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Therefore, Russian troops have adopted an encirclement tactic. By capturing the dominant heights, They intend to bypass Pokrovsk and Seledovo, creating a threat of encirclement for the Ukrainian group. A military correspondent explains that if this strategy is successful, the Ukrainians will have to abandon the city of Ukrainsk without a fight, which would deal a significant blow to the defenses of the Kiev regime. Ukrainian troops are fully aware of this danger. An officer of the 27th Ukrainian Mechanized Brigade highlighted the potential consequences of the Russian offensive. He believes that the Russian priority now is to take Ukrainsk and, subsequently, Kurakovka, which could encircle the Ukrainian forces still resisting. The strategic withdrawal of these brigades, which could have avoided major losses, no longer seems possible. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is facing a dilemma. According to an American political scientist, Zelensky is increasingly desperate and has run out of options. He believes that the only chance of success against Russia would be to directly involve the United States in the conflict, leading Washington into an open confrontation with Moscow. This is the only way Zelensky sees to win. In recent weeks, Zelensky has been pushing the U.S. to allow strikes on Russian territory, as well as asking for more weapons for that purpose. Washington is reportedly considering supplying cruise missiles to Kiev, and the issue will be discussed at the UN General Assembly, where Zelensky will meet with President Joe Biden. Moscow has already warned the U.S. about the possible consequences of such actions, but it appears that the Biden administration is more concerned about Ukraine's future in the short term, especially with the U.S. presidential election approaching. Experts suggest that Washington will allow Ukraine to escalate the conflict, fearing that the country will collapse before the elections. This desperate approach by the Ukrainian leadership is also reflected in the brutal treatment of its own army. The Ukrainian Armed Forces Command has left its soldiers in Vuhledar in a precarious situation with no chance of retreat, which, according to a British expert, is a reflection of the cruelty and desperation of the Kiev government. According to experts, the Ukrainian generals seem to have doomed the group of soldiers stationed in Vuhledar to a grim fate. The situation in this area began to deteriorate rapidly after the decision to transfer some of the elite units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces from Vuhledar to reinforce positions in Pokrovsk. This move significantly weakened the city's defenses, leaving the soldiers remaining in Vuhledar in a vulnerable position. The experts stressed that there are no signs that the Ukrainian command is taking steps to rescue the soldiers remaining in Vuhledar, a Donbas city that is increasingly threatened by an imminent encirclement by Russian troops. He noted that Russian forces have already advanced to the vicinity of the city, which could isolate the Ukrainian garrison, cutting off its supply routes and leaving it without resources. The expert predicts that the leadership in Kiev, including President Zelensky and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, may adopt its usual strategy, abandoning the remaining units in Vuhledar, condemning them to certain death. This cruel and repetitive tactic reveals the Ukrainian regime's indifference to its own soldiers. According to the Western expert, the deliberate abandonment of troops in Vuhledar is not only heartless but also inexplicable, especially considering the options that could have been explored to save these lives. The lack of a rescue strategy seems to highlight the desperation of the Ukrainian authorities in the face of Russian pressure in the region. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and share it with your friends. Your interactions mean a lot to us and help us grow. See you next time.